Welcome to the News9 Plus Show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. External Affairs Minister Dr. S Jaishankar articulates India's foreign policy line like no one else. For obvious reason, he is the Foreign Minister of India. He was recently asked to respond to what the Maldivian President said about India, that India was a big bully. Dr. Jaishankar emphasized that big bullies do not extend aid amounting to $4.5 billion when neighboring countries face distress. How is India different when it comes to China? Joining me to speak about this on the show today are Mr. Rakesh Khar, News9 English Cluster Editor, my friend Pramit Chaudhuri, Foreign Policy Analyst, and Professor Sanjay Bhardwaj of the JNU. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Mr. Khar, I want to start by asking you the statement made by the Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, just a few days after he spoke at our summit. What do you make of this?
Well, I think, Sandeep, Jaishankar is known to speak his mind, and he does it with great aplomb. We all have started celebrating his one-liners.
Yes.
And not just domestic market, the global environment is also, so to say, highly excited about what he says. And so long as it's borne by truth and conviction, there's a lot of credibility about what he says. When he mentioned India in the context of neighborhood policy and the way India has helped neighbors in distress and as a continuity in terms of our long-standing relationship with them, he was making a fine economic point. Remember, Sandeep, the summit where he spoke, he was one of the key speakers. The summit also looked at the cusp of geoeconomics and geopolitics.
Yes.
So that is the framework in which India has been, so to say, helping its neighbors.
Right.
And if we have to make a distinction between the way India approaches assistance and to neighbors versus China, I have a one-liner for it, that is that India does not use assistance, especially economic assistance, in the framework of colonizing those areas.
Right.
We know, using debt as a colonial, weapon is something that our neighbors do, and we know who it is.
Right.
India might not be able to match the Chinese might when it comes to cash assistance to these countries, but we have the intent, the truth of the intent and the intensity to make it happen without any collaterals. That's where it makes a significant difference.
Without any collaterals and no strings attached.
No strings attached.
But Pramit, I want to bring you in on this point that Mr. Khar mentioned, the fact that Indian aid comes with no strings attached, whereas in China's case, it's actually coined a whole new phrase, debt trap diplomacy. How does this work, and how is the Indian outreach very different from the Chinese outreach when it looks at smaller countries like the Maldives?
Well, the first thing I would argue, it's not so much as India doesn't have, should say, conditionalities attached.
Right.
But the conditionalities that India positions are exactly those that are India's are aligned with those of global standards. In other words, ours are no different, for example, from those of the World Bank.
Right.
Or any multilateral financial assistance program that follows international norms. China has deliberately avoided doing so. They have avoided being part of they've now begun voiding even the common framework agreement with the IMF. They avoid World Bank. They avoid a lot of the stuff that has developed over the decades through multilateral aid agencies, learned bit by bit through mistakes and so on. What India has done with its neighborhood, and I should point to Sham Saran, then Foreign Secretary's speech several years ago, where he said that India is prepared to provide assistance to its neighbors on conditional financial terms, but we ask that, and we are prepared to open up India's economy to our neighbors so that they can benefit from our economic growth. But we ask that these countries look to our security concerns. I mean, that is the only real conditionality India has asked, which is that consult with us. And he lays that very clearly. Consult with us when you have a major security decision pending, whether you're going to allow somebody to build a base or so on your country. These are the things that matter to India. So consult. Just have India should be seen as your primary security partner. And in return, we are prepared to be extremely generous. For the most part, almost every neighbor, Pakistan and obviously in China and Myanmar are different in many ways, has accepted this. Our small neighbors have largely come on board. And I would add that when Shiv Shankar Menon was NSA, National Security Advisor, he expanded on that policy by arguing that India would like every major political player in these countries to accept this posture. In other words, we don't want a situation where every time there's an election, one government is pro-Indian and one government is anti-Indian. We want everybody to, and we are prepared to try and persuade you. The game is not to force you. The game is to sit down and tell you, these are the benefits you get with India. What are your concerns regarding India? We're prepared to answer them. And what is interesting, I would argue, and this policy has, I would argue, continued under the so-called neighborhood first policy under Prime Minister Modi. And if you look at Foreign Minister Jaishankar's visits or Modi's visits, they have gone everywhere. They've gone to the Maldives, they've gone to Mauritius, they've gone to tiny countries that we never used to bother with before. And we've laid this out. Literally one political party in one country is now the only exception to that rule. In Bangladesh, in the last few elections, India has not been an issue. Nepal, there has been the odd burst of anti-Indianism, but it's not been like one member out of 5 political parties comes up with it, drops it after a while because it doesn't get any resonance. Sri Lanka, a country that had become violently anti-Indian under Rajapaksas, completely transformed. All the 3 major political centers are very clear India first. Mauritius, a country that couldn't be closer to us in many ways. So we've seen that transformation, but as I said, one party in one country still holds out.
One party in one country still holds out. Professor Bhardwaj, I was just looking at the numbers. Now, since independence, India has committed something like $100 billion in aid to the countries of the region, the near abroad around India. But in the last decade, China has contributed something like $800 billion to all the Belt and Road countries. How can India compete against these economies of scale, despite the fact that many of these countries know that aid comes with strings attached? Why are smaller countries rushing into the Chinese arms?
That's true. Basically, they are pursuing China as an opportunity, and they are looking forward to have economic ties with China. But when you will see about India is not at deep pockets as Japan and China, number one. But if you are looking forward to have India's developmental assistance or support to any part of the world, 84% this assistance goes to the neighboring country. So how much attention that India had been paying for the neighboring countries are very, very commendable, very should be appreciated that 84% are going to the neighboring countries, number one. Number two, you be clear that India's investment is keeping the socio-economic development and political aspects in the neighboring countries. While the Chinese investment are keeping economic as well as strategic dimensions into its mind. There is a difference. There is a difference in two countries' investment and their investments in these countries. Number three, what India is looking forward. India has clear-cut 3 policy objectives while we are dealing with the neighboring countries. One is, of course, is the security, and in the security, keep internal security as well as the external security. While the Chinese, they are not looking what the internal security aspects are there in these countries, because all these South Asian countries are suffering from internal security issues. Either you take Pakistan or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or Maldives, all these issues. But India is concerned about these countries. Either you talk about terrorism, you talk about fundamentalism or radicalizations. So this is a clear-cut differences. We are also concerned about the external security threats, that the presence of extra-regional powers. While the Chinese are increasing competitions in South Asian nations, instead of, but India is not looking for. India is trying to minimize the influence of extra-regional powers in this region. The second clear-cut objective of India has the economic development, and that economic development doesn't confine within the territory. We do not look forward to have resource nationalism. Let's develop ourselves, and we do not bother about the neighboring countries. All the projects, you take it in Sri Lanka about Jaffna to Colombo rail service, you talk look about the Eastern Terminal coast, developing Eastern Terminal coast, making 62,000 housings. You take in Bangladesh that how much we have given around $10 billion of
Yes.
line of credit. And in that $2 billion are high social impact projects are there,
Right.
connecting Mongla with Khulna, and the number of I can count Maitri, this oil
I want to
pipeline
bring in
project.
Mr. Khar. Professor Bhardwaj, I just want to, yes.
Let me
Yeah,
clear one
quickly.
more point.
Yes.
Important point. The third very important aspect is that India is engaging all these neighboring countries, keeping the political stability in
Yeah.
these countries, and
Right.
it is very important. The Chinese do not bother. We are looking
Yes.
that there should be political stability, the democracy should be institutionalized, and that should be institutionalized through the liberal democratic process. So
Yes.
India is much behaving as a responsible regional power
Right.
in this region. It's not, and that's why they should not be considered as bully at all.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Khar, so very clearly two models are evolving in front of us. One is the Indian model, which is very democratic and very consultative, which is the way our country is structured. And the other one is, of course, the Chinese my way or the highway, so to speak. How can India compete, against this sheer weight of numbers that the Chinese economy brings in? The scale of the $800 billion that they've deployed in the last decade. How can we do it better?
Well, I think, Sandeep, as I said right in my opening remarks, we should not aim to do that.
Right.
Because, our economy has a certain standing, it has a certain trajectory. We should not divorce that trajectory just because we want to invest heavily into countries that need our, funds.
Right.
I think the approach that our two esteemed guests said on the show is distinctly different from China.
Right.
First and foremost, we are investing in those countries to build those countries.
Right.
It's not a crutch.
Yes.
That is the model the Modi government is doing in India also. It's
Right.
not looking, it's looking at, empowering people with the development model. Right. So that's what is happening from Bhutan to Sri Lanka. And the fruit of the, the effort that has been put in is there. The Sri Lankan speaker said on record, that India has really ensured that there was not a bloodbath in Sri Lanka.
Right.
And remember, they had very difficult times. So the line of support manifests itself in many forms.
Right.
So it's not just cash. There is a socio-economic context that the Professor Saab just now articulated.
Yes.
There's a cultural context. There is a, also, humanitarian crisis. So on all these fronts, India has been the first. Time is extremely important.
Yes.
When Sri Lanka was in crisis, the petrol prices, they didn't have enough petrol to
Right.
run the country.
Exactly.
India came in with that line of credit. Obviously, when you put in that money, there are certain conditionalities. It would be incorrect to say that there are no conditionalities.
Right.
But as Pramit rightly said, today we have made it, paradigm shift from India being a festering issue in these nations
Yes.
to India being seen as someone who is invested deeply, not just through cash,
Right.
but the larger idea of stability in the region.
Right.
I think that's a key differentiator. We'll have to keep working with them because China is parallelly building in these parameters as well. They're also getting into the cultural zone. They're also getting into building, roads and highways, trying to tell you that, we are investing in the large piece.
Right.
In that sense, we have to stay invested. In terms of cash outgo, even the interim budget, I'm happy to share that we had a 600 crore outlay for Maldives.
Yes.
This comes
Despite the,
the trouble
difference
that
of
we have.
opinion,
So
yes.
in that sense, I think stay the course.
Yes.
Don't compete on the numbers.
Yeah.
Compete in a holistic package.
Right.
And make that count. Make diplomacy do the talking, because the truth of our relationship,
Right.
जो सच्चाई उसकी है,
Yes.
that comes manifest right away, and all these nations are seeing the merit of that.
Right. Stay the course, let diplomacy hold the ground. In fact, Dr. Jaishankar was at the Dr. Jaishankar was at the News9 Global Summit just last week.
Sandeep, just
and he
before,
had-
talking of Global Summit,
Yes.
we had Ashwini Vaishnav with us.
Yes.
I did ask him that, it's a great economic opportunity for India to, so to say, monetize the DPI export.
Right, right.
He said, no, we are not interested in doing the DPI export and seeing it as a business opportunity.
Yes.
That again is a massive political statement.
Right.
When we are supporting other countries stand on their own feet through the
Yes.
digital infrastructure,
Right.
it is there's a business case there as well.
Right.
But he made a profound statement and said that we are not going to use it and don't see it as a business opportunity. We
Right.
see it as a diplomatic opportunity. We
Right.
want to be in the larger influence zone.
Let's listen into what IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav said what Mr. Khar just mentioned on how India's role is very different, how the kind of outreach that we have towards the near abroad is very different. Let's listen in.
We see DPI, being seen as a big ticket export, the defining export from the Indian context. So, that's a great story to tell. And one, where are we in that export? Where exactly is the trajectory going? And second, there's also a view that, export at the influencer level is fine, it's a great idea. But what about monetizing this as an opportunity from an export perspective?
Already three countries are already using it. You are aware. France is using it, UAE is using it, and Singapore is using it. About 30 countries are already in the process of evaluation. So UPI is already exported. There is a lot of interest all across the world for getting UPI within their system. We have signed MOU with Japan, and actually Japan has granted a patent to UPI. Japan has actually granted a patent to UPI. So it's a model, it's a technology which is today widely accepted as a very good way of designing the payment system. Moreover, above that, the structure that we have created, structure in which no one company can be dominant, that structure is highly appreciated by world over, by the policymakers as well as common citizens.
I think there's a related question here. The DPI mechanism, obviously, we celebrated as a grand success. But back home, it's largely running in the government, fuel. It's being largely managed by the government, both as a cost center and also as an operational center. There's large talk of an ecosystem of entrepreneurship, being built around in the private sector. Is that a stated objective, or you want to continue, so to say, subsidizing DPI, penetration in this country domestically?
See, if you look at the model, if you try to understand it, then you will find out how finely that balance between private and public sector is. Had it been purely developed by the private sector, imagine the concentration of this entire very, very important part of the Indian economy in the hands of one corporate or two corporates. Correct? Had it been purely done by government, there would be significant level of, we wouldn't have been able to reach a level which the energy of entrepreneurs can really take it forward. That's why the thought process of having a public-private partnership, where today more than 400 banks are already on the UPI, more than 35 million merchants are already on UPI, more than 400 million users are already on the UPI. If you want to start a payment application tomorrow, you can actually do it. So what is the idea? The idea, thought process is, our Prime Minister is very clear that technology has to be democratized. Technology should be available to every common citizen, as much to you as to a person in the remote parts of Jharkhand, as much to a person in Mumbai, as to a person on the boats of Kerala. It has to be equally available to everybody. That is the thought process by which this entire system has been designed. It is working very well. The world is appreciating, because this flattens the difference between the haves and have-nots. This is a way of inclusive growth. One of the most important objectives of Prime Minister Modi ji's economic policy is inclusive growth. Program after program is designed for inclusive growth. Everything that we do is designed to have has inclusivity as an integral part of it.
Ashwini Vaishnav, on how India's outreach towards the neighborhood is very different. And Pramit, I want to bring you in on this point that, in the long run, how is this going to play out? China hopes to take the place of the United States. It's very aggressively pushing into Asia, especially in the countries around India, this so-called string of pearls. What must India do in the next decade or so, when this competition kind of intensifies? Today it's one country in one party. Is it possible that this Chinese zone of influence could increase, or do you think it's going to recede in the years ahead?
I think it's already starting to recede.
Right.
You mentioned the Belt Road Initiative. You look at the numbers. The Belt Road Initiative, which peaked at about 2016, 2017 at about 80, $85 billion a year in external capital flows from China. It kind of has the money, but in many ways it's struggling because its own domestic economy, its own banking problems, its own real estate bubbles, and its own concerns about what its public will think. Its public is increasingly not supporting these huge external outflows at a time when they're having domestic problems. So China is switching. The BRI is now increasingly being the digital Silk Route. It's really about maintaining digital standards or selling Chinese standards across the world, and then therefore making countries be forced to buy Chinese digital electronic products. And that's one of the reasons India launched the Digital Public, the GDPI project, was that we will give, as was mentioned, we've gone to these countries during the run-up to G20. We talked to 120 governments in the global south and elsewhere. And they said, look, our concern is more than anything else is the loss of sovereignty. We don't want to become part of a US-China battle.
Professor Bhardwaj, this point that Pramit made about the difference in approach, that how India's, the consultative approach, and especially in areas like this digital public goods that we are trying to export to these countries, we discussed it at the G20. How is this going to play out in the next couple of years? Given the fact that the Chinese economy is tanking, they're not going to have the kind of funds and resources to push out to give loans to these countries of the BRI in the next couple of years.
You're looking like, if you are calculating is 2050, India will have just double workforce than China.
Yes.
So you can see that, of course, the world is looking at India as a source of, as a market, as well as a source of manufacturing goods. And there, but what's most important and what this government has been focusing, that we have to improve the base level skill force.
Yes.
And that is unless until we will not improve the base level skill force, the digitalization process would not be very smooth in transactions, trade, everything, connecting, and you have number of infrastructure projects and all that, and coming connectivity projects and all that. But most important aspect that, in my understanding, that unless until we will not improve the base level skill force, we have high level skill force, they are doing very well in Europe and UK, America, and all everywhere, but we do not have base. And this was the one of the factor while we were looking forward after COVID-19 that the MNCs will come to India. There we need to correct the entire region, not just India, the entire South Asian region, because that constitute a market, that constitute a geographical and or you can say demographic entity.
You see, in the years ahead, given the fact that this government seems to be coming back and they have a 100-day agenda, you see some kind of a new outreach to the countries of the region, something like a Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas for the near abroad.
Sandeep, Mr. Modi tried that when he came in 2014. He was disappointed, India was disappointed. But I do believe that the idea is firmly placed in BJP and the NDA's manifesto.
Yes.
And this idea is actually firmly placed across political lines. I think we have political consensus, as Pramit was trying to point out, that there is some amount of continuity, there is some sharpness in the nuances that Modi government has brought in, and timeliness. I think with Sri Lanka we demonstrated that time is of great consequence. I mean, if you're in ICU and then 3 days later you come and say that I'm going to help you with all the vitamins of the day, it doesn't really help. When you're in ICU, you need that blood transfusion that day. So that's what India did with that. And then the range of the cooperation and help has to go beyond, just cash, as I said, and currency. There is a large cultural context, Sandeep, which we need to leverage fully. China has the cash. We have the cultural context. And the other big advantage, Sandeep, to my mind, is democracy. Increasingly, the perks of democracy are dawning on the global population, except one neighbor, which we all know, and we'll leave it unnamed. So in that sense, anything coming from a democratic environment is being received with far greater credibility. That will bring in its own sense of durability. That's where India will have a plus
Yes.
versus China, which
India
is already in a minus.
Absolutely. India and China have two different models at play over here. Thank you very much, Mr. Khar, Pramit Chaudhuri, Professor Bhardwaj. We'll leave you with this excerpt from Foreign Minister S Jaishankar's interview with us at the News9 Global Summit.
You know, this morning we had Prime Minister Tony Abbott speaking as the global keynote here at the TV9 Global Summit. And he emphasized, and he has been famously quoted in saying that India is an upcoming democratic superpower. He's also famously said last year that India, he would like to see India as this 21st century as the India century. And it's better than having the Chinese century. So the question to you, sir, is how does one deal with China? How have you been dealing with China over the years? Because he said, if you have to tackle China, a bully, then you have to stand up to the bully. We've faced China in different capacities. We've also, given an olive branch. We've had the Chennai Connect, the Wuhan spirit. But is that the thing of the past? Post 2019, 2020, is there a new policy towards China, and what's the road ahead?
It's interesting. We've had ups and downs, but at one level, there is actually a consistency. And the consistency is this. If you were to, list 3 or 4 really big things which have changed in the last 20, 25 years, I think most people would agree it would be the rise of China and the rise of India. Okay. You can say, okay, China started it much earlier because, our own politics here delayed the era of reform. That's okay. What's done is done. Now, but there's no question, both countries are rising. And for world politics, this poses a very interesting problem. The problem is this. Both are changing the world order by their rise. So each one has an impact vis-a-vis the world. But they also happen to be neighbors. So their relationship is also changing while it's changing vis-a-vis the rest of the world. Okay? It makes it, therefore, very complicated to create an equilibrium. How do, so it's like this is dynamic, that is dynamic. How do they maintain stability while both are moving vis-a-vis the world order? And we tried initially to, because there were understandings in the 1990s, to manage the line of actual control, the border areas, and to build the rest of the relationship. We tried to maintain that equilibrium naturally first through diplomacy. So what you saw at Wuhan and Mamallapuram, etc., was that equilibrium maintenance exercise. As I wasn't at Wuhan, I was in Mamallapuram, and there was very frank talking, between the leaders. But what happened in 2020 was China, for whatever reason, chose to move military forces in disregard of agreements. Now, that called for a different response for the equilibrium. So the logical thing for us to do, which is what we did, was we moved up forces in a very big way. So from 2020, you have an equilibrium, one part of which is the military posture on the border, in the border areas. One part of it is today, obviously, a political relationship impacted by this border situation. One part of it is also the economic measures we have taken, because, if there is a country today which is trying to put me under pressure, I should rightfully take economic precautions vis-a-vis this country. And in any case, we believe, this government believes, that the interests of our working class, the interests of our small enterprises, the interests of our industries must be protected against unfair competition. So there are also measures which tie in against that. So our effort today is, we have to build the deep strengths. We have to create our digital capabilities, our telecom, our manufacturing, our pharma industry, our health self-sufficiency, our defense industry, our ability to deploy on the border, which you can only do if you build the infrastructure. So in the past, frankly, till 2014, our average expenditure on the China border was about 3,500 crores. Today, it is almost 15,000 crores. So there was a neglect of the border infrastructure. You can't defend your border if you don't build the infrastructure there.
Since January, Prime Minister Modi has made 4 trips to the south. That's 4 trips in a little over 2 months. And for good reason. He's the biggest vote catcher for the BJP. And the south is where the BJP has little or no presence. In the 2019 elections, the BJP's best performance ever, the party won just 29 seats in the south. Are the southern states the BJP's final frontier? Joining me to discuss this today are my colleagues Sudha Sanadant, Professor Sanjay Kumar and Mr. Prasad. I want to start by asking Sudha, apart from Kerala, the BJP's named states candidates to Telangana its first batch quite early in and on the game. How challenging is the south for the BJP?
I think extremely, although the BJP and particularly Prime Minister Modi is making all the right noises. I don't think there has been a Prime Minister in the history of India who has given Tamil, for instance, such an encouragement, whether it was the Sengol in the new parliament or it is Kashi Sangamam saying how Tamil is ancient, etc. Well, so far as ticket distribution, which you spoke about just now, they are still waiting what to do, because Annamalai is now a force to reckon with. It's all comparative, Sandeep. It's not like, it's not an ultimate thing, it's relative. 3% vote share, they may better it this time around because of Yen Mannu, Yen Makkal Padayatra, which Annamalai did. They have announced the tickets for Telangana. Today, Sandeep, it was very interesting that we saw Prime Minister in Telangana and Adilabad, and Revanth Reddy, the Chief Minister, got on to the stage and spoke to addressed Mr. Modi and said that, look, if you want us to be the kind of economy that you keep dreaming of, you need to support us. So synergies are happening. But very, very long haul, very, very tough haul. We know what happened during the last assembly elections in Karnataka. So it is very difficult, but the BJP, like I said, is making all the right moves, as it were.
BJP making all the right moves. Professor Kumar, 39 seats in Tamil Nadu. BJP is yet to crack the southern state, but as my colleague Sudha was saying, they're making all the right moves. The Prime Minister has really gone all out to woo the Tamil electorate. He's, the symbolism has been enormous in the last couple of months with the Singol and other, outreaches. Do you think this is going to translate into votes in the Lok Sabha elections?
Vote, certainly. There's no doubt that BJP will be able to increase its vote share. I have no doubt about that. If you look at 2019 Lok Sabha elections, BJP's vote share was roughly 3% in Tamil Nadu. So votes are going to increase, but I think BJP's strategy would be, along with whatever has been mentioned by Sudhaji, that Prime Minister Modi is trying to make all the right moves. The campaign, in a way, has started from Tamil Nadu. But I think what they will try to do is to focus on few seats, maybe 4 or 5 seats. And even if they are unable to win any of these 4 or 5 seats which they are going to focus, even if they come number 2 in some of these seats, they will be able to, make a big noise, because the whole narrative that BJP is largely in the North Indian states and BJP is still to expand in the South. So that narrative they want to puncture somehow. If they manage to win 1 or 2 seats in Tamil Nadu, that would be wonderful. That will create a lot of noise. BJP will be able to create a lot of noise around that. Even if they are not able to win, if they come second, even with that, they will be able to tell to the people that now look at BJP's performance in the South. So BJP is really working hard for making a presence felt in the southern states.
Mr. Prasad, the fact that the Prime Minister is there as we speak in Tamil Nadu and he's, made a lot of announcements there today in the South. Do you think Professor Kumar was saying, it's a long haul. It's going to possibly be a few seats, a handful of seats, and then who knows, in the next election, it might actually translate into double digits. Do you share his sentiments?
As far as BJP is concerned, they can only put their finger in part of Karnataka and part of Telangana. And rest all like Kerala and Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, they have to forget.
Right.
They can't even imagine, they can't even think. And gaining some more seats as far as Telangana is concerned, by suppressing BRS maybe. But as far as original Congress vote bank is concerned, that will never travel and that will never transfer to BJP. Last time, because of some internal consequences, BJP has won 4 seats.
Right.
But this time in Telangana, it's quite difficult as far as the winning of the existing 4 is concerned.
Right.
If you really recollect the last assembly elections, they contested 3 MPs in their own origin, they lost.
Yes.
Their battle as far as 3 MPs are concerned. The one and only Kishan Reddy, fortunately, has not contested. That's why he has got survived. Otherwise, all 3 MPs, they are in battle and they lost the battle.
Right.
But just like Karnataka, the last flavors still going on.
Yes.
And as far as some fighting, Congress may gain as far as BJP MPs are concerned in Karnataka. But Tamil Nadu is totally ruled out, and Kerala, there is no chance at all. Kerala is always switching between communists and Congress. So obviously there is no role of BJP. They may, as far as southern states are concerned, they may get a good marks by using Ram Mandir in Uttar India. But when it comes to Dakshin, it's quite evident in almost every street we have Ram Mandir, and we know how to pray Ram, and we know how to give respect to Ram. That lessons we need not learn from BJP government, and particularly from West Hindu Parishad as far as Hinduism is concerned. These categories, these cards are concerned for BJP. It will not play any good role to gain some vote bank and all. The one and only pocket what they have in Karnataka, because of the 40% commissions and 40% of malpractices, which still boomeranging in between BJP and their candidatures. So obviously, they'll definitely, these southern states, they need to forget as far as these elections are concerned.
Southern states, they need to forget. But you know, Sudha, I was just thinking that Tamil Nadu, 39 seats, Lok Sabha seats, and there's a leadership vacuum there. You don't have any tall leader for probably the first time ever. There's no Jayalalitha, there is no Karunanidhi, there is no MGR. And you have companies making a lot of money by creating AI avatars of all of these leaders. Do you see that, you know, in a state like Tamil Nadu, which, you know, traditionally has voted for big leaders like this, is, you know, they have huge fan following, and the first time you don't have that. Is it possible that the Prime Minister could actually, you know, by his personal charisma, make a dent, which is what he seems to be doing?
But I think the charisma of larger than life characters like Karunanidhi, you know, last assembly elections, there was no Karunanidhi, there was no Jayalalitha. The point is that at that time, AIADMK, you know, led by Edappadi Palaniswamy, he had a truck with the BJP. The last 2-3 months, he's also severed all relationship with the BJP, saying that we as a Dravidian party do not want to be seen having a close truck with what is called a North Indian party. So I don't think that Mr. Modi can actually fill up the gap, but that is not to say that if you compare last time, like Sanjay ji was also saying, 3% votes, this time around, maybe they will go a notch above. Karnataka is very interesting. Karnataka, the caste census is still awaited, because Siddaramaiah will present it in the next cabinet. If that happens, with the BJP gotten Shettar back into their fold, you know, this whole Vokaliga Lingayat, it may become a very, very touchy subject, and BJP could perhaps run away with that, because that is something which all of us are waiting for, and that may impact the Siddaramaiah-led government, Sandeep.
Right. So that Karnataka, for sure, the BJP is going to make a dent. But Kerala and Tamil Nadu?
No. Kerala, absolutely not.
Like,
there is no go in Kerala at all. Although the RSS, you know, has already done a lot of groundwork there. There is no gainsaying that fact. But then it is absolutely impossible. And in Tamil Nadu, it's always been this Dravidian or that Dravidian. They have only, you know, seesawed between 2 Dravidian parties, which are anti-North, anti-Hindi, and what they call anti, you know, the hegemony of the North Indians over what they think is very sacred, and that being Dravidian culture.
Dravidian culture. Professor Kumar, the point that Sudha made and Mr. Prasad did as well, Tamil Nadu and Kerala being no-go zones for the BJP. The BJP has just come out with a very interesting list of candidates for Kerala. Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Mr. Anil Antony. Its first Muslim candidate was announced in Kerala. Do you see the BJP going all out in Kerala, at least to get the second position there? You know, if maybe not number one, but you know, in the next 5 years, they could probably make an impact there. What are your views on this?
See, if you look at the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, in Kerala, in the constituencies where BJP contested, they managed to get roughly 1/4 of the vote, 23-24% votes in the seats contested. We should not forget that 2014 Lok Sabha election, Thiruvananthapuram seat, Congress managed to win with a very narrow margin.
Yes.
In the 19 election also, BJP performed very well in Thiruvananthapuram seat. This time now Rajiv Chandrasekhar has been fielded from Thiruvananthapuram, and it is going to be likely a contest between Shashi Tharoor and Rajiv Chandrasekhar.
Yes.
It may turn into an interesting contest. Very difficult to say whether Shashi Tharoor is going to win the way he has been winning the election from that constituency. So my own sense is also that, like in Tamil Nadu, BJP is also having a strategy of focusing on 4 or 5 or 6 seats in Kerala.
Yes.
On Malappuram seat, they have already fielded a Muslim candidate. There is another constituency, Talseri. In Talseri also, they are trying to make inroad, trying to mobilize the Christian votes in their favor. So there could be interesting contest in few constituencies. I think BJP will certainly be able to improve its vote share. Whether these vote share will give them dividend in terms of seats or not, that is yet to see. But I'm pretty sure BJP's vote share is going to increase in both the states, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, in 2024 elections compared to 2019.
Right. And Professor Kumar, since you're a psephologist as well, I want to ask you this point of the Abki Bar 400 par, the 400 seat plus target that Prime Minister has given the party and the NDA. How critical is the South to this 400 par, 400 plus seat tally?
No, absolutely critical. If BJP has to get anywhere close to 370 and NDA has to come close to 400, they have to win more seats from the southern state, because there are large number of states in the North India where BJP has maxed.
Yes.
Rajasthan 25 out of 25, Gujarat 26 out of 26, Madhya Pradesh 28 out of 29, Chhattisgarh 9 out of 11, Himachal all 4 seats, Uttarakhand all 5 seats, Haryana all 10 seats, and there are large number of such states where BJP has already maxed. Delhi all 7 out of 7. So and that finally added up to 303 seats for BJP.
Right.
So if BJP has to come anywhere close to 370,
there
is no way they can reach that mark with only expanding in the North Indian state. They have to win seats in the southern state. That is why southern states are going to be very, very crucial. If BJP has to come anywhere close to what Prime Minister Modi's aim is, 370 for BJP and 400 for the NDA.
For the NDA. Important point there, Mr. Prasad. And since Professor Kumar said that, you know, the South is very crucial for the BJP to get to 370, which is a 2/3 majority. And like you're saying, if the party cannot break into Tamil Nadu and Kerala, with 2 of the largest, groupings of Lok Sabha seats, especially Tamil Nadu, will the BJP get to 370 seats if they can't break into the South?
No. As far as the history of India is really concerned, if you really look into it, only Jawaharlal Nehru has won 3 consecutive times. Other than that, nobody else. This is the biggest challenge for BJP right now to gain government for 3rd time. That's the first challenge. And apart from that, it's very difficult if Congress gets in between 100 to 150.
Yes.
By forming NDA government is one of the another biggest challenge.
Right.
The crookedness, the management show how Congress will opt. There is no clue for BJP and as well as NDA is concerned. These are all the lessons which they learned from Congress, but quite difficult. But there is a big this thing as far as people should understand. Professor Saab knows pretty well. Even though states wins by the respective parties, when it comes to general elections for parliament, they can't even play a single role. Just like Rajasthan, if you really look at it, Galat government, they simply hands up by the time of parliament elections. They don't even conquer even a single seat. That's why the Professor Saab has said very clearly that they'll conquer Rajasthan 100 out of 100 like that. Right. So when it comes to Uttar Pradesh, the agricultural sector bills were passed, not even and the bills have created a lot of ruckus, and the people have been killed by doing some accidents. Even after they conquered UP, by seeing all these bad lessons by the people, we are assuming that we are living in democracy. But fortunately, the democracy driving steering is with the BJP, particularly with the missions, how they play and how the crucial role will be done by their missions. And basing on that, they give numbers. Here and there, they'll get the power like that.
Right.
If they aim for 400, 370 is obvious. That's how the things are happening.
So that looks very difficult.
Still, I can't assume that. And I can't even imagine what sort of roles have been played with respect to state governments, at least to winning the battle of parliament seats as far as parliament seats are concerned. There is no role at all. By seeing Rajasthan is the biggest example, and all the debate how you're driving, you're only asking about the second place in most of the cases. If they give an opportunity to be in second place, the next time the regional, first Congress will get a dent, and second, regional parties will be smashed. This is how the democratic policy what NDAs and BJP is opting right.
Right. So, Sudha, going by what our panelists have said, looks very difficult for the BJP in the south in 2024.
Yes, and also...
Do you think it will build up to 29 then? That's the big challenge?
No, I think that one thing which we are also forgetting, I am forgetting rather, not us, is the tax devolution, the whole federal polity, which a lot of states feel has been demolished by the BJP, Modi-led BJP at the center. And that is going to come back to bite the BJP in a major fashion. In Tamil Nadu, when we saw Pinarayi also in Delhi, we saw all these, and even someone like Jagan Mohan Reddy, who's a master at flip-flops, he also spoke about it. It's like we don't get our fair share, but you want us to be part of this growth story. We are not. What do you expect us to do? So this whole exploitation kind of angle is also there. That is going to be, I don't think a Ram temple can erase that.
Bridge the
divide. That can't.
Right. So that's clearly one of the big challenges here for the BJP as it looks for its mission south. And I'd like to thank my co-panelists Sudha, Professor Sanjay Kumar and Mr. Prasad on the BJP's mission impossible in 2024. Can they do it? If they don't, 370 is a far cry. But we'll be tracking that story in subsequent issues of this show. Thanks for watching.